times as drummers, we learn a new beat that's really cool, but then after we play it for a while, we're tired of it. It no longer sounds cool to us. Well, this lesson talks about a way to sweet out a beat or to make the beat better. And in doing that, we're also going to learn those beats that you heard at the beginning of the lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about beat numbers. Make sure you have the beat sheet for this lesson so that you are able to follow along. First of all, we're going to look at beat number 1. Now, beat number 1, we could consider that beat that you learned, which was cool at first, but you've played it so much that now you're kind of tired of it. And I'm going to play that for you. I'm going to explain the counting on this beat because it's important for you to understand this beat, because this is the beat that we're going to use as the bass beat that we're going to sweet out. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Be careful with the second measure because there's a ghost note in there, and a ghost note means you play it very softly. I'll show you just that beat 2, 2 and 2 and Without the ghost note, it would be 2 and with the ghost note, 2 and Now remember, this beat 1 is the bass beat that we're going to sweet out. It's the beat that you learned, was cool, and now you're ready to sweet it out. In displacing a snare, all that means is you're going to take one of the snare drums and you're going to move it somewhere else. On this beat, we have the snare drum on beat 2 and 4 of the first measure, and the second measure we have it on beat 2, and then we have a ghost note, and then we have it on beat 4. All you need to do is take a snare drum and move it somewhere. What I'm going to do is take the snare drum in the first measure on beat 4, and I'm going to move it to the and of 4. So instead of 4, I'm going to have 4 and. Just so you can hear the difference between the regular beat and the beat with the displaced snare, I'm going to play the regular beat through once, and then I'm going to go into the beat with the displaced snare. Now the displaced. Can you hear the big difference that made just by moving a snare drum? All I did was displace a snare drum. Where to move a snare drum and even how many to move, that's up to your creativity as a drummer. You could even decide it sounds best if you take a snare drum out. That's up to you. Another technique to sweeting out a beat is to add an open hi-hat. And an open hi-hat is just simply when you lift up on the hi-hat cymbal so they're not pressed together and you hit it. That's the open hi-hat. On this beat, we've already sweeted it out by displacing the snare, which is beat 2. Now we're going to go on to beat 3, and it's exactly the same as beat 2 except for one thing. Added the open hi-hat on beat 1. I'm going to play beat 2 through twice, and then I'm going to go on to beat 3 with the added open hi-hat so that you can hear the difference between the two. Now the open hi-hat. Just like with the displaced snare technique, where you add the open hi-hat and how many you add is up to you. It's not always going to sound good wherever you put it, and it may not sound good at all. You'll have to make that decision. Another technique you can use is to add some toms. In adding toms, you're just going to add some toms wherever they can fit. Where you add a tom and how many times you add is up to your creativity as a drummer, and it'll take some experimenting. I've decided to add a floor tom on beat 3. So we'd have 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3, and I move my right hand over to the floor tom. Now, keeping along with everything that we've added already, we've displaced the snare, we've added the hi-hat, the open hi-hat. Now we're going to add the tom in with that. And this is what it's going to sound like. I'm going to play the regular beat 3 through twice, and then I'm going to go on to this modified so you can hear the difference. Now the added tom. like a beat to change up every couple of times through. So I'm going to keep it the same as it just was, but I'm also going to add a high tom on beat 4 of the first measure every other time through. And I'll show you what that'll sound like. About a few techniques to use to sweet out a beat. And the first was to displace a snare, the second was to add the open hi-hat, and the third was to add some toms. What I'm going to do, just so that you can hear the development of these beats that we've done, from your beat sheet I'm going to play 1 through 5 twice through each, with the exception of number 5 because it has a repeating pattern, and play that 4 times. Those are some techniques that you can use to sweet out your old beats. Remember that it takes some creativity and experimentation to find some stuff that sounds good. But when you're done, the results are nice. Make sure you watch Sweeting Out Your Beat 2, which is an extension of this drum lesson, and it teaches the technique alternating patterns. It's a really cool technique.